Susan Maury, is that how I pronounce your surname?
Correct.
PhD candidate at Monash University's School of Psychological Sciences. Now, Susan, you're talking about the connection between singing and evolution. How have they come together?
Well, it's there's not a lot of agreement in this field about why we sing. But we do know that in every culture around the world, singing is a vital part of the community. And we know as far back as we can trace, it's been part of humanity. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of theorizing around how it started and why.
Yeah, why sing? And do we have any answers as to what's your view as to why we sing?
It's the nomads. The nomads? It's the nomads.
What's the nomads?
I don't know something what they are. I read the thing. I wanted to chime in and know something.
No, but you studied this as a Year 12 student.
I did a talk on music and the brain.
Did you?
I got an A and an A minus. I was not happy about the A minus. She was wrong. It's fine. I didn't go on about it.
Maybe I should be asking you questions.
I don't remember anything. Apparently, I just thought it was the nomads. Apparently, they don't exist.
What are nomads?
I got the wrong word. I don't know.
Oh, we don't. You copy my note. There you go. Andrew, there you go. You can take over. So did you find it? Because every mother I know sings to their babies as almost a matter of course, even if it's just for little. You know, I would notice that my babies, even as I was speaking, would soothe and become. And I remember as a kid being held on my dad's chest and hearing his voice vibrate through his chest and finding that a very comforting feeling. Is that part of why we do it? Because for soothing, for self-soothing, for connection, language?
There's a lot of theories. Looking at how infants respond to music is a really interesting field all unto itself, and there's some really interesting research being done there. But we do know that infants respond very strongly to music, especially to their mother's singing. Yeah. Which is it's a very intimate thing done between a mother and child, and it's very comforting to the child. And they have seen how the child will even have physiological responses to it. So it's quite dramatic. Something linked to that is what's known as motherese, which is how we talk to children in a sing-song voice, which people do automatically. Yeah. Which is also quite an interesting thing to ponder, why we know how to do that. And
I saw this happen at Christmas. My sister just had a baby, and the baby was crying, and we're driving, and she just started singing, but she's the worst singer.
Doesn't matter.
Like aggressive, awful sounding, loud. I'm sitting there furious, just wishing she would shut up, and the baby just went into this trance and fell asleep.
What was she singing that was loud?
It was like it didn't go bong and then one of those songs. It wasn't a soothing one.
The ning nang nong when the cows go bong.
Yeah.
And the monkeys all say boo. It's a
the ning nang nong when the cows go bong. She just, Eliza, my niece, was just like, oh, beautiful. What happens then? When do you stop? Because now when my mum sings, I feel, shut up. When did I grow out of that?
Well, this is the thing in our Western society. We really professionalized music making. So if you don't feel that you're good at singing, you have to be very comfortable with someone to sing in front of someone else, or even a lot of someone. Yeah. Because we feel that, you need to be good at it.
Yeah, because we took something that was lovely and free and personal, we monetized it, and it's
made it very competitive.
Yeah, it's working out well.
Yeah. So it's something that in a lot of ways we've dropped from our daily life and from our social interactions with each other, which I think is to our loss. So the theories that I'm looking at, because you did ask, there's 3 components to singing, which I think may have made it advantageous for early hominid groups to participate in this.
Hominid. There's the word you were after.
You used to ask me when it started, and I said the nomads, but that's the word I made up.
Hominid.
That's why everyone was confused. That's why I got the A minus.
Well, we can see that now.
Yeah. Okay, so the 3 things that I think really that I'm focused on for in terms of benefits are emotional benefits, social benefits, and cognitive benefits.
Okay, so tell us about what the cognitive benefits are. I've always understood that music, language, and mathematics somehow combine neurologically, but I don't know. How?
We do know that if you've had musical training, it actually can change the brain, and that musicians have better attentional abilities and better working memory, which is in the executive function area.
Which might explain the language ability.
It might.
It might.
Yeah.
It's just a theory. We can just chuck theories out. Doesn't matter. I don't have to prove anything.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I'm actually more interested in just everyday uses of music, not trained musicians. So, in terms of cognitive benefits, I'm really interested in the executive function skills, whether just everyday uses of music would improve those. But I'm particularly interested in the cognitive flexibility. And this is the ability to put ideas and concepts together that you don't normally put together. So it sits under creativity, and it sits under moments of insight. So when you have an intractable problem and you just go around and around and around and you can't solve it, and then suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, you have the perfect, elegant solution.
Yes.
And some people have a lot of insight.
Yeah.
Some people hardly ever. So, and there's been a lot of research around insight, and this is actually where I got interested in the singing. I came to it from the perspective of insight, and whether there's ways that you can uniquely prepare the brain so that it's more likely to have a moment of insight.
And just to stop down on terms for a second, what do you mean by term like insight? Is that sort of a capacity to know oneself, or is it a problem solving?
I'm looking at it in terms of problem solving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so someone who is insightful, you could say, is good at resolving problems. And I love the use of the word elegant there. So this could be a social issue where you have to be incredibly deft handling at whatever the situation is. Is that what you mean, like sort of managing people's emotional states?
Yes, but also when you have a complex problem, how do you find a solution to it? And quite often we tackle these issues in a very straightforward kind of way, which may solve one aspect of the problem and create 10 more.
Yeah.
And we tend to think of creativity as within the creative fields, but it's something that we should be using in everything we're doing. So insight is basically a creative process, but put to some purpose, whereas the creative fields are more, for aesthetic reasons.
But so somehow music works neurologically to assist insight.
This is my theory.
Okay.
So, yeah, I haven't tested it fully yet, but I'm scoping it up. And I think that the emotional and social benefits of music play into this. We know that being in a good mood and having reduced stress makes it much more likely that you will have that flexible thinking.
Yep.
So one possibility is that singing would increase your positive mood and decrease your stress.
Yeah.
And that might be one of the reasons why it would
keep doing
give you increased cognitive flexibility.
So you're pitching that we start doing like sing-alongs before
Can you go a bit closer to
budget
the mic?
meetings
Sorry,
and
darling.
stuff?
Yeah.
Sing-alongs before budget meetings and...
What a great idea.
It would be.
It would be such an equalizer. Get everyone around. Sing a song.
Why do you think there's such a strong connection between singing and religion? Like, almost all religions have this kind of chanting, or they sing to, like, God, which seems kind of, I guess, a weird thing for them to all coincidentally decided God really loves. He really wants us to, shout.
Sing. It's not, but it's singing in harmony. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah, it depends on the church, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would think part of the reason is because singing is a form of communication, which is not the primary purpose of singing is not to impart information. It's an emotional kind of communication. So that's quite strong in the research literature that some people call music the language of emotions rather than information processing. So it would make sense if you are trying to communicate with something that is beyond language that you would use music.
Singing in a choir. Have you ever sung in a choir, Josh?
No, not since I was 12.
No, but even as a 12-year-old, because I sang in one all the way through high school and stuff, and when you could... It was almost like a group problem-solving exercise when you depended on somebody to do it. So I was a soprano. and you had to know what your bit was, and then when everyone did exactly what they were meant to do at the right time, it was incredibly satisfying, and more than that, it was really beautiful and uplifting. I don't know how you could sing and not be happier for having partaken in the activity.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And there's also that social connection, which I think is really important, that singing has a way of increasing social bonds, and that would have also been obviously very advantageous for early hominid groups.
Yeah.
In terms of being able to coordinate their decision making and work together and be able to defer their own needs for the good of the group, which would have been key for survival.
But in terms of everyone, is there anyone who can't sing? Any human who has a voice can surely sing.
You hear a lot of people saying they can't sing, but it's actually quite rare to find someone who has what's termed amusia. Amusia means that you can't actually decode music. You can't make sense of it. You can't tell if one pitch is higher or lower than the other.
Oh, that'd be awful.
Yeah. And even rarer is the inability to track rhythms. It's quite rare.
Right.
But there's a few people.
Why are little kids not very good at singing often? No, sorry. Sorry, but you know how bad they are when they start singing? Like little kids, their ears not developed, or they're just not concentrating, or they're just bad.
Well, learning pitch, there is a process of learning pitch.
Okay.
And tone.
I know they love it, and I know that they're enjoying themselves, but no one else is enjoying it.
But the interesting thing about children and music is that even a newborn can decode music. Even a newborn can understand music, and we think that's normal. We don't think it's anything amazing, but we're the only animals, as far as we know, that can do that.
Whales, don't they sing?
Curveball.
Yeah, sorry, but we don't know what they're. No one still yet, as far as I know, understands why exactly whales sing to one another. Whether it's courting, giving location, telling people we're communicating for food,
just complaining about the Japanese.
Yeah.
Basically,
that's right.
Just whining about that. But yes, but apart, well, they're another mammal too, aren't they?
They are. There are a fair number of animals who make music. It's been argued that they don't make music in the same way humans do, because if they weren't making music, they wouldn't be communicating, and we can communicate without using music. So
that's why people like Steve Pinker, is it Pinker or Pink? No, Pinker.
Steven Pinker.
Steven Pinker thought it was sort of just one of those unimportant evolutionary bits, just a scrap that fell off that we don't need to sort of focus on, because we can't find any direct correlation between seeking a mate. So birds sing to attract a mate, or other species make noises to ward off predators or things, but we're the only ones who can talk and sing at the same, well, not at the same time. Oh, yes, we can. I don't know. So that's why, because we can't find a direct cause why we still need to sing.
Right. Yeah, and he quite infamously came out and said that music was a spandrel of language, that the important thing that came out of that was our language abilities.
So and can you explain spandrel?
Yes, a spandrel is something that
I think Josh might be a spandrel of life, but I'm not sure.
A spandrel is an evolutionary term which refers to some kind of trait that we may carry forward that no longer benefits us.
Yeah.
So
no use.
Yeah, so Steven Pinker called music evolutionary cheesecake and referred it to cheesecake because we still love cheesecake. We think it's delicious, but it's not really very good for us. But, back in the early days...
But you couldn't say singing's not good for us. And I've had my queries about cheesecake just quietly too.
Yeah.
He thinks it's like the appendix.
Like
the nipples on a man.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So... it actually was a great thing for music psychology, because people got quite indignant about this proposition, and a lot of research has been done to look at, what are the benefits of music? How can you say there's no benefits to making music?
And the fact that we keep doing it, and that so much music is sometimes you can hear music that you think is Middle Eastern, and then all of a sudden you'll hear something that sounds, even within that, distinctly Celtic, that you can recognise as. There is such a universality of sound that people make, even if their backgrounds, cultures, religions are so vastly different.
Yeah, it's true. And there's been a lot of research around what are the universals of music, and it's actually a very long list, including the use of scales. So it may be there's more than one scale.
Yes.
I think there's 3.
Yeah.
I'm talking off the cuff there. I think there's 3. But every culture has a scale, a musical scale.
Yeah, and some tones, like I know that the tones of some guitar-like string instruments, we have a semitone in sort of Western music, but in Middle Eastern music they have up to 9 tones, half tones between notes. So, yeah, it's something that's been in existence for a very long time, which clearly makes people very happy. How do you know if you've won? How do you know if your theory's right? Where does the money come out?
Oh, well, it's all speculation, isn't it? Because whenever you're talking about evolutionary hypotheses, you don't really know. But what I'm doing is I'm using that as a framework to think about what the benefits might be for us today. Okay. So I am close to the start of my research. I've done a few pilot tests, and I'm scoping up my big research now. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to try and test these hypotheses and see what kind of results I get.
Well, I wish you all the very best with your work. That's Susan Maury, PhD candidate at Monash University School of Psychological Sciences. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been lovely to have your company. You're staying for a minute, and we're going to listen to some music that makes me